The first Pineapple Express brought heavy rain and flooding to parts of Southern California. In the northern part of the state, this latest system meant multiple swiftwater rescues. Well, that storm is over, but there's another atmospheric river on the way. Let's bring in NBC meteorologist Angie Glassman with a look at exactly what the West is facing this weekend with these seemingly back-to-back-to-back storms.
Yeah. More than 20 million Californians experiencing flooding as the first of two powerful storms make landfall. The storm phenomenon is known as atmospheric rivers. These extreme weather events cause severe flooding and billions of dollars in damage. Atmospheric rivers can measure 500 miles across and stretch 2,000 miles long. Hurricane hunters are flying into the West Coast atmospheric rivers to learn more about them.
What exactly is an atmospheric river?
An atmospheric river is really a river in the sky, but it's a river of water vapor pushed by the wind.
This is a call for vengeance. Welcome to today's show. Has anybody heard of an atmospheric river before? I mean, apparently it became a thing in the 90s, but as you heard in that clip, I deliberately left that one clip in there where you hear about the pilots who are going to fly into it to figure out what it is, or are they going to fly into it and leave some nice geoengineering in there to make sure it's sufficient enough to cause major flooding. So what we're seeing is very, very obvious. The first clip, you heard the person, the Tavistock Institute news anchor, human, if you want to call it that, talking about how California was getting hit after one, after the other, after the other. Now, why am I covering this story? Because remember, you can't predict the weather, even though somehow the Weather Channel seems to manage to predict the weather all the time, right? They tell us when these storms are coming. Sometimes they try to tell you that it's wrong, so they don't want you to think that it's too obvious that they're telling you what the weather is beforehand. You're supposed to believe it's from radar and those types of things. Only the Weather Channel can predict the weather, or can, but nobody out there can control the weather. That's what they really tell us, right? Well, think again. I'll show you in a few minutes how you can control the weather. In fact, this is something that's been going on for quite some time, and most of you already know about it. But let's talk about atmospheric river aimed at California and why I'm covering it. Because it's being labeled as a rare level 4 of 4 risk of excessive rainfall issued for Santa Barbara and Oxnard. If you look at the map, you could see that it's the area on the map is pretty much the entire coast, down southern coast, right? Including, we saw San Francisco get drilled. This is going all the way down from Northern California all the way down. Look at that. San Francisco, Monterey, Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and even down to San Diego. Now you might say, well, what's the big deal? It's a coast. They get storms on the coast. Well, think about the other thing going on at the same time. They're deliberately trying to cause civilians to flee the state. Deliberately causing them to try to flee the state. Because remember, they have to restructure the infrastructure, new infrastructure. So for people out there, like they just hear that word infrastructure goes in one ear out the other ear. Okay, if we're going to have a digital, artificially intelligence controlled government, and that's what they're putting in here. Okay, that's what the World Economic Forum's talking about. That's what our government's talking about. Just nobody's paying attention to it. Artificial intelligence governance, right? Why do you think they're gaslighting you with race and gender and all this stuff? Because AI doesn't see these types of things, right? No, AI just sees everybody as a slave. That's what AI sees everybody as. They don't need to see black or white or anything else. As long as we see those things, they can continue along with their evil, sinister plans. So to bring about this new infrastructure, literally buildings have to be destroyed. They have to be removed. Okay, you can't put this infrastructure in without building new buildings that are run on smart technology. All technology that will connect directly to Wi-Fi, so to speak, right? Let's just put it in layman's terms. It all connect to Wi-Fi. People are like, oh, that sounds fun. Great. We'll be able to control the thermostat with Wi-Fi. We won't think about who's controlling it, and we won't think about going forward about the carbon footprint or climate change or any of that stuff, right? So what they need to do is they need to get people out of these areas where they're going to put the first smart cities in, and really they're going to be smart states. Okay, the whole infrastructure needs to be taken off. This entire coast has been a target for quite some time. I've covered the floodings over the years. I've covered the earthquakes over the years. They're doing this specifically in California as they try to run everyone out. Nobody's suspicious, again, as to why these cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco are allowing the people to just commit crimes, rob Nordstroms, all makes the news, and everyone's like, they're just doing it because Democrats are letting black people do what they want. That's what they want to gaslight conservative people to think is the reason why. They're doing it because they're literally going to bring in a bulldozer. Let's put it that way for people out there that don't get it. They want to demolish everything and build fresh. So all buildings, all small businesses will not be a part of their quote unquote smart city plan, or that, whether it's that or their freedom city with the conservatives, there will be no small business owners. Small business owners are gone. Okay, they just tried to run you out with the outbreak. They'll make sure they do the job now. And if they have to flood you out, they will. So this is just another way that they use the weather. Okay, they manipulate the weather to get what they want. They say, oh, it's going to cost billions of dollars, right? Now, does Maui sound familiar? What happened in Maui? Before all that stuff happened in Maui, they tried to buy out people in Lahaina to get them to sell their homes. So people said, we're not selling our homes. We're not leaving Maui. So what did they do? They lit them on fire. They literally burned Lahaina to the ground and told you it was a wildfire. And then, of course, people with common sense started questioning it because they can't really contain social media to the point where people can't put up posts of stuff that's actually happening there. So instead of trying to fight all the people out there who were saying there's no way this is climate change, they just dropped the story altogether. They never mentioned the fact, of course they wouldn't, why would they? Because remember, this is state-run media. The media is the government. They would never mention the fact that they tried to evict all these people and get them out and they wouldn't leave. So they just burned them out. So the same thing in California. If you haven't left yet in California, okay, and you're liberal and you think that, they have your best interest at heart, well, like I've said a million times, you got sucker tattooed probably on your eyeball at this point. I mean, each video I'll just use a different body part. Because, at first I said forehead. Then I said, rear end. You might as well just get it tattooed in your DNA because, well, eventually these people will have it tattooed in their DNA. Some of them already do. So this storm, obviously, when you hear stuff like that, that's where you start going, okay, rarities, things like that don't happen often, like all those tornadoes that were hitting in states that tornadoes never hit. That's a telltale sign of how we know that this is weaponized weather. We shouldn't even have to explain this to people. But we do, in a sense, because they still think that, it's a storm. They don't control the weather. Well, if you don't realize they control the weather, here's some clips and some compilations that I'll show you in a minute of our government over the years talking about controlling the weather, even going back all the way to 1961, even going to our friends at Disney. Remember, all these people love Disney. These adult children out there who think the government can't control the weather. Disney flat out told us that they could. Tomorrowland when they had it sponsored by Monsanto. But don't forget this too with controlling the weather, which is the other point I wanted to make. Because this video got removed, but I did a video, and not many people saw it, it's on the website, of Lil Nas X's video about the Ark. He just did a video about Baphomet's Ark. A lot of people covered it. Nobody saw the actual, well, what I saw at least, what I was seeing in the video. Now, this was a headline from CNN, more monster waves to slam the California coast. They show this picture of people running away from this. It doesn't look staged in a sense it does, but we see people running away from the coast. Now, maybe they did this to get more and more people to leave, but Lil Nas X had the same photo, global flood warning, in his video that was on the news a week prior. Now, some people commented, they're like, oh, well, with the way editing is, they could throw that in there and just change it up. Give me a break. You know what I mean? When this stuff is in the can, it's in the can. When it's going to be released, they know months in advance of when it's going to come out. But they were showing you this ahead of time, and the whole video, the premise of it was flooding the earth. Because remember, this is all biblical stuff. So God's promise was to never flood the earth again. But Satan is attempting to flood the earth again. Remember, he mimics everything our Father does. He inverts everything. So if God says he's not going to flood the earth again, well, Satan's going to do whatever he can to flood the earth again. And that's what they're doing with weaponized weather. That's what we were seeing in that Baphomet's Ark video. So back to the story here. Again, they rewrite history. That's a lot of 1984. We talk about rewriting history. The book talks about, I should say. Atmospheric river is something they're normalizing. They're just making names up for weather events that don't seem normal because they're absolutely out of control weather events that we've never seen before. So when somebody goes, what's an atmospheric river? I never heard of this. They just go, oh, well, climate change. Climate change, climate change. That's what it is, climate change. And you're just supposed to nod and go, oh, okay, there's these bizarre weather events, and conveniently the entire coast of California is getting hit over and over and over again, while we see them literally allowing criminals and drug use in the streets to make people leave and flee the cities. Don't be suspicious at all. Or you could just look at some of these clips I'll play for you right now of JFK, of people in Congress talking about weather manipulation and weather control. Even Disney chimed in on it. So if you don't think they can control the weather, think again.
Mr. President, honored delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we shall propose further cooperative efforts between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control. We shall propose, finally, a global systems of communication satellites linking the whole world in telegraph and telephone and radio and television. The day need not be far away when such a system will televise the proceedings of this body to every corner of the world for the benefit of peace.
I wanted to ask a couple questions here about HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Several of you at the table have a little bit of a piece here. As you know, this is located up in Alaska. It's currently funded by the Air Force Research Lab. It was formerly funded by the Office of Naval Research. One of the prime customers is DARPA, which is currently running experiments at the facilities here. Then to Dr. Walker and Mr. Schaefer then, Dr. Walker, your agency is currently running the facility. I've mentioned that it's our understanding through the president of UAF that the plans are to move forward and demolish the facility this summer. So the question to you is that accurate? Can you explain why? And then perhaps to both you and Mr. Schaefer, is there any benefit in exploring a potential relationship with the University of Alaska to perhaps take over the HAARP?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. The Air Force has gotten great value out of HAARP in the past. We took over from the Navy and managed it and actually did a number of experiment campaigns up there and have finished our work that we're interested in doing up there. We've moving on to other ways of managing the ionosphere, which the HAARP was really designed to do, was to inject energy into the ionosphere to be able to actually control it. And but that work has been completed.
Mr. Fletcher, another question on the in an interview with the Los Angeles Times on April 21st, you said that you told the Associated Press that the American government has created weather tampering techniques so that the New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans and to control the rest. Would you explain what you were trying to say?
Well, what I was trying to say is exactly what I said. There is weather control techniques. We have a complete package on that, which I did not bring, but I certainly will see to it that it is brought in for the record. Number one, the entire patents on the equipment. Number two, Senator Claiborne Pell's complete statement and story of his own that not only does it exist, but that we even utilize it as far back as the Vietnam War. You might want to touch base with Senator Pell.
I just want to repeat before I turn it.
So yes, but we do have all that information.
You're saying the government has created weather tampering techniques so that the, quote, New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans.
Worldwide.
Millions of Americans, and to control the rest.
Yes, sir, and that's my belief. As bizarre as that sounds, if somebody had told me that that equipment even existed 10 years ago, I would have thought they were nuts, sir. And at this point in time, we have all the documents to prove it. And if you think that 85 tornadoes takes place in the middle of our growing area by simultaneous accident, I'm sorry. With the equipment that's already set up internationally, and as bizarre as that is, it is proven and documented. We will supply you with those documents. As bizarre as that is, I would say that weather wars, and this is quoting actually Senator Claiborne Pell himself, that they are the greatest weapon ever created in the world, and that's the Senator's own statement. So yes, I do stand on that.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Thank you.
These artificial clouds will block the sun from evaporating more water to feed the hurricane. The reports coming into the control center indicate that the diversionary cloud seeding over Kansas is now creating a flood danger. Specially equipped robot aircraft are dispatched immediately to release a high concentration of cloud seeding material into the fringes of the storm. Heavier seeding from the ground also helps to subdue the rain by spreading it over a wider area. The controller calls for another view of the hurricane, which has now moved closer to the coast.
Signal out on #1 satellite. 10-minute interruption for correction. Have you anything else in the area?
Satellite station S1 is approaching area. We'll make contact. S1, this is Weather Central. Request video signal at grid coordinates COCO.
An emergency situation has developed. In an orbiting space station 1,000 miles above the hurricane, a crewman sends a temporary picture back to Weather Central.
Okay, S1, your video is R5S5. Thank you.
The hurricane has stopped moving toward the coast, but is still intensifying. It must be made to move northward and out to sea. This is a crisis.
Aberdeen Station, activate multiple seeding rockets on course 117.
The controller decides to fire cloud seeding rockets just ahead of the hurricane, hoping to start it moving. Slowly, the hurricane begins to shift. All available forces have been brought into play. Now we can only watch and wait. After hours of tension, the turning point is reached. Latest reports indicate the control strategy is successful. At last, the high-pressure ridge has settled along the coast, forming an invisible wall of safety. The storm is over. The danger has passed. The hurricane has been defeated, turned away from the land, and left to spend itself harmlessly far out at sea. In the world of tomorrow, weather control will enrich and safeguard our daily lives. In the foreseeable future, we will conquer more than violent storms. We will turn the destructive elements of today into new sources of power, shaping the land on which we live. All mankind will benefit. Arid wastelands will be made green and fertile, and vast frozen areas will become productive. To this end, man-made satellites will probe the secrets of the skies. They will be our eyes in outer space.
So, of course, we have HAARP. We have so many things out there that they control the weather with. A lot of people, they look at this stuff and it's so over their head because it's so much for them to process, right? Psychologically, they can't process this type of stuff. Don't ask me how they can't, because, when you look at the people who are unhinged by the certain politicians like Biden and Trump, they're so unhinged by them. How could you ever think from an opposite political party? Like, if you're a Democrat, don't you think that Donald Trump would do something like this? Supposedly, you should think that, right? And then the other side, wouldn't you think that Biden would? Right, but they're like, well, weaponized weather, it sounds too sci-fi for me. It sounds like a movie, like a horror movie. But this is patented by our government for the trillionth time, I'll cover it, because every time somebody finds my channel and starts seeing this stuff, they start waking up, because they start going, yeah, I've never heard of, 15 tornadoes at once hitting a state that has mountains and trees. Aren't tornadoes supposed to form in the middle of plains? Oh, well, not anymore. Oh, well, not anymore, right? Just like men can suddenly have babies. We're always taught that only women can have babies. Not anymore, right? The science changes as it goes when it's convenient for the Communist Manifesto. Okay, so keep an eye on this story. And remember, the specific states like California are going to be liberal havens. And I call it liberal haven, Democrat haven, hive. I mean, look, both sides, this is what it's set up to be, right? This is going to have smart city infrastructure, which is going to be marketed towards the Democrats who are obsessed with their tech. Not that conservatives aren't, but they're going to be persuaded and manipulated in other ways with their whole Freedom City nonsense that they're going to fall for. But they have to, what do you think, that people living in Santa Barbara or San Francisco, even if they're Democrats or whatever, are going to just be like, hey, you know what? You could, change the whole structure of my home. You could turn my home into a smart home. It doesn't fit in with the blueprints, okay? They have a blueprint in place of how they want this world to look, this country specifically right now, okay? And it does not look the way that it currently looks. In fact, the majority of people are going to be herded into states the way that they want them to, which is what they're using the politicians and the celebrities for. But the infrastructure itself has to be taken down. So they're not going to just let somebody, even if they're a Democrat and they vote communist, have their home and live like that. Because remember, you're going to own nothing and be happy. And in their mind, if you survive what's coming, you should be happy. That's the way that they look at it. The way I look at it, these people need to be handled with private justice. Let's just be real at this point. We're dealing, if you were dealing with Jeffrey Dahmer coming to your front door trying to go after your son, okay, how would you handle it? If you called the police and they didn't do anything, how would you handle it? Right? Would you let him get your son, or would you go, you know what? Enough's enough. I'm going to have to deal with this myself. They don't want you to think like that. That's terrorist thinking. Okay? That's extreme thinking. Defending yourself, defending your family, defending your land or your property or your whatever you own. Because we all own it. Remember, the government owns it all anyway. None of us own anything. So how we're allowing these people to dictate this, to do these things, is beyond me. But then when you see stories like the Elmo story, if you didn't watch the video I did earlier on MK, I mean, you just watch those videos. I know sometimes you see a thumbnail, you're like, I don't know, it doesn't really interest me. People need to know about this. Even if it bores you, you need to understand what they're doing to human beings. It might sound boring when you hear words like MK Ultra or mind control. Okay, this is legitimate. This is literally legitimate. Somebody who's a subscriber on YouTube here, who goes by the name of Bung1029, said, I think it was Mark Twain who quoted, "It is easier to fool a man than it is to convince him he's been fooled." And ladies and gentlemen, that sums it up best. Because that's what we're living amongst. People have been completely fooled and cannot realize that they've been fooled and would rather fight for the lie than wake up to what's really going on, which is the truth that we're all trying to get out there to everyone. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all well. Pray for the people in California. Of course, everybody around the world needs prayers right now. So many people are suffering mentally. So many people are suffering from all sorts of attacks that are going on, spiritual attacks, physical attacks. And it all stems from the satanic government around the world, this globalist government who is doing this to all the citizens around the world, including flooding them out, including the citizens of Turkey who got drilled with unbelievable earthquakes that barely got covered in the United States of America, which wiped out, just the amount of people that got killed is surreal in Turkey during that, when that strange thing appeared above the sky. And then they had that earthquake right as they were talking about breaking away from the UN or breaking away from NATO, right? And of course, at the same time, I know a YouTuber got banned from the platform just for talking about it. But that's the way it goes, folks. And speaking of that, make sure you subscribe to my backup channels now if you haven't, and look for my podcast on Spotify as well as on Podbean for the time being. I'm working on trying to get on Apple Podcasts just to get into the belly of the beast and try to infiltrate and get to people and wake them up. But definitely do those things if you haven't yet. I thank you for being here. God bless all of you as always, and your families.